Hello, my friends. Welcome to my corner. It's been such a long time since the last bookshelf tour that I did that I wanted to continue with that. I'm gonna keep this short, okay? I promise. Let me just tell you a little bit about what I have for you. I have a book from the Soviet Union, a book in Norwegian, some Japanese literature, books in French also, some volumes from the Library of America, and a few from the Modern Library too, or maybe just one of those. Don't take my word for it. Um, Lots of stuff, okay, like all sorts of things. I have great collections by Latin American authors also, collections of short stories. A couple of movies thrown in there that have nothing to do with anything. So that's all that I wanted to say, really. Just for the sake of context here, the bookshelf that you're about to see is right below the one that I have shown you before. So you can kind of picture it that way. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you so much for joining me in this exploration of a bookshelf. Let's see what we have. Okay, my friends, so here we are. Let me take care of the books that are on top of the books first, and just so you know, like last time, there are also books behind the books. So we are looking at quite a few items. So I start with these. Let's see what we have here. Okay, this is a book in French that I really enjoyed. It's by Osamu Dazai, so I really, like to look for authors that I have read, maybe for books that are not as well known, like this one, Villon's Woman or Villon's Wife. It's very, very small, but I really liked it. Very, very short book also. I got this collection also by Solzhenitsyn. It has basically his stories and those little texts that could read as prose poems. So I haven't read this, so I'll be honest with you. I still have that one to look forward to. Conrad's first novel. Many people say that if you read this one, you can tell that he was still grappling with the English language. So it's another book that I'm looking forward to reading, because I've read maybe Conrad's most important books, but not this one, and I do really want to see what it was like, what his style was like at the beginning. This one is in Spanish. I had this nice little collection of Artaud's writings on the cinema, including his screenplays. Yeah, so really, it's nice to have in one volume, and of course the cover is simply amazing, right? So I have that. And then this also very short volume by Calderón de la Barca from Cátedra, really nice editions, El Gran Teatro del Mundo and El Gran Mercado del Mundo, so the great theater of the world and the great market of the world. Two very brief allegories that he wrote. I think Spanish theater really needs a lot more attention than it gets, especially Calderón de la Barca. Life is a Dream, La vida es sueño is his most famous play, but also his other works. I think many readers tend to forget that there was such a thing as a golden century of Spanish theater, because that is not really promoted a lot. I have a couple of Magnificats here that I just stored here. These are not really books, but there it is. That's what I have there. And then by Italo Calvino, I have here The Baron in the Trees. I have read If on a Winter's Night a Traveler and, of course, Invisible Cities, but I found this one at a library sale for, I think, $1, and I still need to experience that. This is a very good book, A Catholic Goes to the Movies by Father Daniel Callum. It's, of course, criticism, film criticism from a Catholic perspective, and let's see if I can show you what some movies that you would find here in the... I don't know if you would be able to read the contents, but just in case, we have films like Brooklyn, Son of Saul, Calvary, Noah, Cloud Atlas, Nebraska, The Adjustment Bureau, The Tree of Life, great movie, right? Bright's Head Revisited, No Country for Old Men. So it's quite ample in its scope. Into the Wild, The Passion, The Illusionist, The Prestige, and The Magician, the Bergman film, Metropolitan, Barcelona, The Last Days of Disco. You have Whit Stillman's movies there. So it's a very interesting approach to film criticism. I really enjoyed this book right here. And I have two books in Spanish from Argentine authors. This is one that I have reviewed, The Dangers of
smoking in bed. So if you've seen my video on this one, if not, there's always that option right there. And another great author from Argentina is Alan Pauls. This is his history of money, or a story of money would be a more accurate translation. He has a trilogy: Historia del Dinero, Historia del Llanto, and Historia del Pelo. But this is the one that was translated into English, in case you're interested in this author. You've seen this one before too in my video on Kawabata's works, his correspondence with Yukio Mishima. This I was very happy to find. It's a Japanese novella, I would say. I'm trying to remember whether it's a novel or a novella. It's a short novel or a novella. Let's look at it that way. By Tatsuo Hori. The Wind Rises, right? So I could not find a translation of this either in Spanish or in English. So I had to go with a French edition, and this is one of those moments when I was really happy that I can read French. It's about a writer whose fiancé is in a sanatorium. So it's a very interesting story, and it happens to have the same title as Miyazaki's film, The Wind Rises, right? I have a film here, a movie. It's very interesting because you may be able to see this. It has no title in the spine. For some reason, it didn't come out right. Great film from Vietnam, Cyclo, right? By the same director as Scent of the Green Papaya, and also Norwegian Wood, and many other films. Vertical Race of the Sun, I think, was another one that he did. So let me show you the ones that I have here. You can see some Library of America books. I have this collection of poetry and tales by Edgar Allan Poe. It basically has his complete writings when it comes to, poetry and tales, and he's a lot of fun to read. And next to that, I have a very interesting volume here, because this is a collection of writings by Ivan Bunin, Stories and Poems. I was really happy to find a book that includes poetry by Bunin, because today we read him primarily as a short story writer, maybe in the tradition of Anton Chekhov, but he was also a very good poet. And the good thing about this book is that it's from the Progress publishers. So it's really from the Soviet Union. You can even see a little note that I thought was a lot of fun back here that says you can even write to them and everything. So it's very interesting. This is a historical document now. And it also comes with, you can see some of the text in Russian there. And it comes with some nice images, right? Some nice illustrations of the stories and of the novels that it includes, and some of the poems too. You can see a little bit of it. I think this illustration is from The Village, or A Village, as it was translated, and others too. You can recognize some of these. I think this is from his autobiographical The Life of Arseniev. The Gentleman from San Francisco, of course, his famous story. This one, if I remember correctly, is Light Breathing. This one, I don't know, could be anything really. But I like the art, right? This is, I want to say Sunstroke, maybe. And there was another one, I think. No, that's the last one. But yeah, very, very nice edition, hardcover. Then right next to Edgar Allan Poe, what I have here is also prose and poetry by Stephen Crane. So it has all the classics right here. The Bride Comes to Yellow Sky, and all those great stories that Crane wrote. I think it doesn't. I think it might even include his novel, right? The Red Badge of Courage. Let me check. Yeah, it does. It does. Maggie, A Girl of the Streets. All of those classics by Stephen Crane, which are great also. And I do have, of course, my Raymond Carver. I try not to read this too much, because his style is just infectious, I would say. You just, I know infectious maybe has a negative connotation to it, but you know what I mean. He's the kind of writer that you read and you want to imitate, or you imitate without even realizing it. And then I am ashamed to say that I have these 2 volumes of collected stories by John Updike that I haven't opened yet. I am kind of building anticipation. It's been a while actually since I have had these 2. His story, A&P, was very important to me as a reader and as a writer. Maybe I can put together a video on that in some time, Look at this. This is Victoria, but it's not just any edition of Victoria. It's in its original language. You can see the publisher there, right? So yeah, my father brought me this book from a trip. And as you may know, I have at least one book by every winner of the Nobel Prize, and in some cases in the original language. Not a lot of them, to be honest. Most of them I have in Spanish, in English, or in French. But every now and then I have an interesting one, you know. Kokoro by Natsume Soseki. I think that this is a very important novel in the Soseki context, but it's not really my favorite. I did not really, enjoy it as much as I did others by him. Select poems by Cummings. Great poet. I love his stuff. He has also been imitated quite a bit, but I don't think it's possible actually to imitate him successfully. Then the typical collection of short stories by Thomas Pynchon. I have 2 volumes of Beckett here. I went through a Beckett phase back when I was in college, and I read all of his works. I think the only one that I'm missing is Disjecta, which brings together his nonfiction, his articles and things like that. So I have Murphy. I did not really like Murphy that much. And then of course I have the trilogy, Molloy, Malone Dice, and The Unnameable, which I really enjoyed. I did enjoy that one. The complete short stories of Hemingway, that typical edition that includes all of his stories, because there's another one that is, that does not really have all of them, but this Finca Vigía edition, that's the one that you want to go for if you really want to have all of Hemingway's short stories. Then something here that you have seen before, if you've seen my video on Ulysses. This is the edition in which I read it originally back when I was like 19 or something, and it's from the Modern Library, so I really like that. And speaking of editions, sometimes I do look for a specific edition of a book, and with William Gaddis's The Recognitions, I had found many editions, hardcover, softcover editions, the what do you call it, the paperbacks, right? But the mass market and all that. But I said no. I just want to keep waiting until I find the exact edition that I want, and I just kept telling myself, good things come to those who wait. And in my case, it did. One day I was at Half Price Books and I found this one, which was the one that I was looking for. Not only the Penguin edition, but the newer one, which I don't know, for some reason I like this, and I was able to find it. But I still have not read it, so that is the important part of it. I still need to read that book. I have 2 very slim volumes here. This also I have shown you before in my video on novellas. The True Story of A.Q. by Luc Sun. So it just has that, right? So it's a very slim text. And then also part of my Nobel Prize collection, I have this affordable edition from Dover of Bergson's Laughter, right? An essay on the meaning of the comic. I have not read a lot by Bergson, I'll say. Okay, I've read this one, I've read his Introduction to Metaphysics, and that's about it. And then I was also very fortunate to find a hardcover edition of The Ruined Map by Kobo Abe. This was one of my favorite novels by Abe. Not so much, I'm not a big fan of Woman in the Dunes. I do like it, of course, but I'm more of a, The Face of Another kind of guy. The Boxman, or this one, The Ruined Map. And then I have here by Patrick Modiano, So You Don't Get Lost in the Neighborhood, which I really enjoyed. This is a late novel by him, but it's very well written, I think, and it's very enjoyable, the story that you can that you read there. Let me move the camera a little bit so you can see the other part of the shelf. I have some more movies there, so we'll see what that is. Okay, let's see if I can move without knocking the camera over. So, I have The Ring. This, I would say, is one of my favorite more modern or more recent horror movies. And, this is a very good Canadian movie, Monsieur Lazare. I really like it. I like movies that are set in the classroom, for obvious reasons maybe, but this one in particular, it was nominated for the Academy Award. That's how I found out about it, and so I watched it, and I really enjoyed it. I have here selections from Kierkegaard's journals. So this is also by Dover Publishers. So it's pretty good. It's not very long. I took quite a bit of notes, I underlined quite a bit, 254 pages, and it covers most of his journals. So very, very enlightening read. This book is also very important for me. So this is the Nunca Más. This is the, it's a report by the Commission of Disappeared People, right? Comisión Nacional sobre la Desaparición de Personas. So it's the report about the people who were kidnapped, tortured, killed by the military coup d'etat that ruled Argentina from 1976 up to the return of democracy. There were several governments there, but throughout that period, it's like one of the bloodiest periods in the history of my country. This is, as you can imagine, a very difficult book to read, and I have not read it. I have read only parts of it, but it's really a shocking, devastating experience to read that book. This is also part of my Nobel Prize collection, People in the Summer Night by Celia Mpe. So I have not read this. I've read The Maid Celia, but not People in the Summer Night, so I look forward to doing that. I've shown this before, I think in the video that I did on Edgar Allan Poe, Simulacra and Simulation. Great collection by Jean Baudrillard. So great stuff, critical theory, you know. I have one collection of short stories by Philip K. Dick. That includes The Minority Report. I have not read many of his short stories. I've read a few of his novels, with mixed results, I'll be honest with you. I think he was a great writer, but he was so prolific, you know, that inevitably his novels are not all, you know, at the same level, I would say. This was a very affordable edition of Fear and Trembling. This is one of those books that you can get for free. So somebody, you know, decided to print it and sell it. So that's what it is. The Rat by Günter Grass. I really wanted to love this novel, but it did not really have the effect on me that I was expecting. I don't know if I am getting more, I don't know, I don't even know what to call it, but more fussy or more picky as a writer or what. But of course I love The Tin Drum, but I have yet to read a Günter Grass novel that I feel like, wow, this really, really, you know, amazes me. The Rat was all right, but, you know, as I said, you know, I was expecting a little bit more from it. Then, believe it or not, here I have one of the autobiographies of Johnny Rotten, okay, from the Sex Pistols. I really like the punk rock movement, so I bought that, and I haven't read it yet, but I've looked at it and I thought it was a fun read. And of course 1Q84 by Murakami, which I read a couple of years ago, and I liked it. There are many loose ends to it. If you've read it, you know what I mean, but it's still a very good novel. I don't think it's his masterpiece. Many people say Kafka on the Shore is his masterpiece, but I have not read that, so I cannot really tell you about it. And then 4 volumes here by Alfaguara in Spanish. These are very good. For instance, this is basically gathers the complete narrative work of Juan José Arreola, one of the most important short story writers in the history of Latin American literature, and more specifically in that of Mexican literature. Then I have Fogwheel from Argentina, his complete stories. And one that I really like, this is one of my prized possessions, the complete stories of Juan Carlos Onetti. Great writer from Uruguay. Great novels, you know, he has just wonderful novels, and this collection of short stories is really good too. And the one that I have here, this is the first volume of Cortázar's complete short stories. I had different editions of this, so I already had many of the stories here, but the good thing about this volume in particular is that you have here the stories that he wrote in that early collection titled La Otra Orilla, The Other Shore, which are not part of, you know, most collections. That those stories are, you know, most of the time not included in other books. So I basically bought that volume because of that one, so that I would be able to read them. So that's the part that is visible. Let me take all this stuff out of the shelf so that we can look at the books that are behind. Okay, so there we go. This shelf, by the way, is about to collapse. Okay, some of these are just too heavy for this type of shelf. So it looks like I'm going to have to make some tough decisions and maybe, get rid of some books or take them to a different place because this is just not sustainable anymore. I have this biography of Borges by James Woodall. It's short, okay, not really exhaustive or anything, but maybe good as a point of departure to learn about Borges. Selected Poems by Tagore, the Penguin edition. I like the fact that Penguin put together his selected poems. They also have a volume of short stories, and they have, of course, his novel The Home and the World. So those are most of the books by Tagore that I have read at this point. And then I have, also from the Library of America, the 3 volumes of Eugene O'Neill's Complete Plays. It's interesting. When I was in college at one point, I decided that I was going to be a playwright. And of course, if you want to be a playwright, you need to have the complete works of Eugene O'Neill, right? So anyway, that's how I got to it. There are some very good plays by him that I have enjoyed. I also have this poems and translations of Ezra Pound, also a selection from the Library of America. So you can now see why this is almost falling apart, because the Library of America volumes are really heavy. When the time came for me to read Pamuk, I was reading the Nobel Prize winners. I chose The White Castle. Not only because it's brief. I like brief books. I like long books too, but sometimes, to get started, I choose a shorter one. But because this is a story of doppelgangers. So, and I like that. But unfortunately, at this point, this is the only book by Pamuk that I have read. So I do need to do something about that, because that is just not right. This is a Nobel Prize collection in Spanish. You can see here they have a Werner von Heidenstam, St. George and the Dragon, and Endymion. It's a nice collection. They don't have all of them. I think the last one was probably from the 80s. I think the last one they did was on Jaroslav Seifert, his selected poems, which I do have somewhere. I may show you that in the future. This one by Josué Carducci, Odas Bárbaras. So they're all in Spanish. It's very convenient if you're looking for books by Nobel Prize winners to have a collection like this one. And then by Mistral, Frédéric, not Gabriela, right? Mireio. And the other volumes of O'Neill's plays, right? And here's the last one. So, I have Kafka's Complete Stories. I would like to reread this at one point, probably soon, because it's been a while since I read it. I think at this point I'm missing just Kafka's Diaries. It's the only thing by him that I haven't read. So it's been quite an adventure. And then I have the Modern Library in 3 volumes of selected stories by Anton Chekhov. This, it's by no means complete. You can see that they're all this thick. So the early stories right here. Then a second volume of later short stories up to 1903. And the final one had longer stories from the last decade. So some of his novellas you can find in this last volume. If I remember correctly, this collection brings together 123 stories by Chekhov, exactly. So I don't know. I don't even know how much that is, like what a percentage it is of his output, but it may be about a third of it, or maybe a little bit less than half of his entire, short stories, because he wrote so many of them. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but at one point I became interested in William Golding. Like many people, I had to read Lord of the Flies for high school, right? I did not read it, I'll be honest with you. I just read parts of it and just, took the exams based on the discussion in class. But then, and this is something that I do all the time, when I was done with high school, I went back and I read Lord of the Flies and many of the other books that I did not get the chance to read. And I thought, wow, let's check out more by Golding. So I read many more, but I did not get to this one. This is the one that he published right before he won the Nobel Prize. It's about writers and editors. So I think it's quite interesting, More by Nobel Prize winners. I have Questions of Precedence Préséance by François Mauriac. This one is about Bordeaux, where he was born. So he left Bordeaux at one point, and then he wrote this book, basically ripping everybody to shreds. So I thought it was interesting. You know, I found it used. It's a relatively good copy, hardcover and everything. So I'm gonna check this out probably in a probably soon, I think. Then I have William Faulkner. I've read many books by him, not all of them, but I feel that at this point, I've read the most important ones by them, except for that final Snopes trilogy that I'm about to read. But Sanctuary was a very good one. It's very easy to read. Many people complain, about the difficulty of Faulkner. You don't really see that in Sanctuary. And then Intruder in the Dust, I read this during a trip back to Argentina many years ago. I did not really enjoy it. I don't know why. I would like to explore that, but I don't think this is one of Faulkner's best books. This may well have been the first thing that I read by André Gide, the Immoralist, when I was once again, looking for the winners of the Nobel Prize. So it has the advantage of brevity, and it's a novel. So it's one of those, one of those important books for me. I have more from the modern library. This is Le Morte d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory, the gathering of Arthurian legend, the retelling, really. It's quite thick, right, and quite lengthy. I have not read it, of course. Many of these books I have here, close at hand because I do want to read them, one of these days, pretty soon, sometimes. But some of them I have read. For instance, this. I have read pretty much everything by Modiano except for his last novel. So this one was not one of my favorites. I don't know why, but this one I would say was one of his weakest efforts, if you ask me, if we can say that. Oh, and you know what this is, right? Yeah. So there you go, hardcover edition. I found it once at Half Price Books. I was like, wow, that is nice. I do not remember really much from it. I really cannot tell you. It's very slim compared to the original, the first one, The Story of O. So honestly, I cannot really speak about this book because I read it, but I do not remember. And as I was telling you before, I have more by William Golding from that time that I decided to get more of his books. And I just collected them. This was his last novel. It was left unfinished at the time of his death, but they published it because pretty much it was, it just needed a little bit of revision, if I remember correctly, and that was it. And you know from a previous video that I'm a fan of Claude Simon, so I have some of his novels here too. The Grass. I hope that doesn't fall. Triptych. I love this one. This was one of the novels by Simon that I enjoyed the most. I also liked Conducting Bodies. I think I enjoyed Triptych a little bit more than this one, though it was still very good. I found these at hardcovers, also at Half Price Books one day. And The Wind. This one I had to get on the internet. So yeah. And the last thing I have here is, let's see. This was quite an event when Papeles Inesperados was published, because it gathered some of the writings that had been left unpublished by Cortázar, so it was basically new material. And it's, let me see if I can find the date of publication. So it was 2009, so in 2009 they were publishing new stuff by Cortázar, so a lot of people went crazy because it's like, such an event. This book, by the way, was very recently published translated into German for the first time. The classic study by Cortázar of John Keats, very long, okay? I have not read this, I need to read it. So, there you go. And I have here a couple of, look at this, conversations. I like to read interviews with authors because they give you a lot of insight into their personality and the way they approach the writing process and all that. So I have this one Conversations with Eugene O'Neill. Then I have this one with Nadine Gordimer, whom I need to read more by. I've read My Son's Story and Julie's People, so I need to read. Berger's Daughter would be one that I would probably follow that with. And then, what is this? Let's see. So an introduction to theory and practice of literary criticism. This was for a class. I do not remember which one. I want to say this was for a Spanish class. We looked at theory first in English, and then we did the criticism in Spanish.
Okay, my friends, so that was part 2 of my bookshelf tour. I hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know if you have read any of these books or any of these authors. Any recommendations, comments, advice, recipes, anything, they are always welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by, and have a wonderful day.